Welcome to today's episode of Arkansas Minds. In this episode, we uncover the heartfelt journey of Gabe and Katie, the dynamic duo behind Fort Smith Coffee Co. In this episode, we explore.
We started roasting the year before, roasting out of a popcorn maker at home.
Popcorn maker?
Yeah.
Yeah.
During the first year of our marriage, we lived in Australia. I really got exposed to everything that goes on over a cup of coffee, and that's really where the dream was birthed, for sure. We would go and clean houses together, and that's how we learned to work together.
And then all of a sudden it was like, what about this other dream?
Hello, guys. How are y'all?
Good.
Hey, good. Good to be here.
I'm good. Did you know that you started a coffee shop?
What?
Yeah.
Oh, you knew? Oh, good.
Okay. I'm just saying, because everyone wants to start one, but you guys actually did it. When did you actually, start making coffee or get into it?
So spring of 2014 is when we first started roasting on a commercial coffee roaster and selling beans at farmers market.
Okay.
That's how it all started.
But we started roasting the year before and just, roasting out of a popcorn maker at home. So.
Popcorn maker?
Yeah.
Okay, so you started roasting on a popcorn maker, but did you intend to start selling at farmers markets whenever you started roasting, or was it just like for your own coffee at home?
For a very brief time, it was just for us. And then we started giving it to friends, and very quickly, within, just a matter of months, we started going towards commercial roasting.
Okay.
It was, you can only go so far on a vintage, yellow hood popcorn popper. So
Yeah. So let's go back to the beginning. Where did kind of the dream start for y'all? Whose dream was it?
Katie. Yeah, Katie. Yeah, it was originally Katie.
Yeah, we've been married 20 years this summer, and during the first year of our marriage, we lived in Australia, and Gabe was going to a Bible college and doing a worship and creative arts program, and that was my first barista job. And so I really got exposed to everything that goes on over a cup of coffee, and that's really where the dream was birthed, for sure. Yeah.
Well, when you were working as barista behind the bar, what were some of those dreams that you were thinking about looking like at that time?
So really, it was just about the people, the community. I saw that it was really coffee shops, even at that time, 20 years ago, were still this melting pot of different walks of life, and just a gathering place. And that's what I wanted. I've always believed that human connection is pivotal, and what better way to do it than over a cup of coffee. So that it was really always about the connections for me.
Mm. So you having that idea, what was one of the biggest hurdles that you were thinking, or that I guess were stopping you from at that moment right then going and doing it while you were still overseas?
Well, we knew we were coming back to the United States. Gabe was born and raised here in Fort Smith, Arkansas. So that's where we ended up landing after we moved back to the States. And so that's really, we started noticing, hey, the craft coffee culture is lacking a little bit here. But at that point, we were really just beginning our life as newlyweds, and wanted to have a little bit more solid foundation before we really jumped into it full on. So, and honestly, I was terrified. I may have never done it if it wasn't for this guy.
And that's what I was going to say, is that we weren't both on the same page at that point.
Yeah.
I didn't even like coffee. And she would make drinks for me, and I'd be like, no, I don't like that, and so it took a long time to really come to fruition, and for us to be on the same page.
So I guess for you, what kind of was your experience around coffee before at all? Like, you had never had tried it, or if you have tried it, what did you try and not like?
Yeah, I mean, I remember trying my mom's coffee when I was like 8 or something, and just being like, that's disgusting. And it was just like watery, milky, hazelnutty, like not very good drink. And just, that kind of turned me off to it. And And then I would try things because Katie was into it, but just never really tried anything that just really hit the spot for me. And then one day she gave me a doppio macchiato. And that was
with a lot of raw sugar.
With a lot of sugar in it. and I was like, that tastes like coffee, like what coffee smells like. And that was it.
So y'all were overseas together. Mm-hmm. Okay. What were you doing at that time?
I was going to Hillsong International Leadership College and doing the worship and creative arts program.
Okay.
Yeah.
So he was a student while I was working as a barista during that time.
You went over there with him not knowing what you were going to do before, or did you kind of have an idea? I
just knew that he was going to be going to school. He had the Montgomery GI Bill because he's a veteran, so they were paying for his schooling. So I just knew he was going to go to school and I was going to apply for a job, whoever would hire a little American.
Speaking of American, what was the culture difference that y'all mainly noticed over there?
Oh, I mean, it's very similar. I mean, a lot of similarities. I remember at one point making a list of everything they called by different names. Very similar vibes, but Americans maybe didn't have the best reputation. I remember seeing a billboard because we just took public transport. And I remember passing a billboard and the catchphrase for some soft drink or something was more refreshing than a quiet American. And I was like, ooh, maybe I should stay quiet on this ride.
That's hilarious.
So, and obviously everyone has those generalizations, stereotypes that they make, but really we felt very welcome by our community that we made there.
I loved Australia. It was great.
Too.
Yeah.
Me too. And I
think the biggest change in culture was just going from we didn't live in a small city at that point. We lived in San Diego, but we went from San Diego to Sydney, and Sydney's a very big city. It's like the New York of Australia. So
yeah, that's a good way to put it.
So Sydney, and you went from where?
We were living in San Diego when we got married. That's where we met. He was stationed in San Diego.
I thought San Diego is a pretty big city as well, though.
It is.
It's big, but it's just more spread out, I guess. And
very spread out. Yeah. And it seems a little more chill. Sydney is very, very urban. Now, granted, there were suburbs all around that weren't as much, but we lived, in a high-rise apartment in the middle of everything in the heart of the city. So that's probably why we have that perception. But it was busy for sure. And I mean, it was very similar because I'm from California. So it was probably less of a culture shock for us because I grew up on the coast and he had already been in the Navy and been all over the world. So, it wasn't too much culture shock, a lot of more similarities than differences.
I had visited Sydney twice or two or three times. Yeah. Before we lived there for a year.
Okay, so you went over there and you obviously had a job. You weren't sure at the time exactly what you were going to be doing, but you went over there with a purpose of kind of like working towards what your future would look like. So at that time, what did you think your future would look like?
I was pursuing teaching. I had acquired an associate's degree in San Diego, and that was the track that I was on. And I'm so glad I didn't do that. But that's kind of where I was headed at that time.
And I had just gotten out of the Navy for 4 years and was hoping to get back into worship leading at church or something music driven, so.
Do you kind of have any creative outlets for that nowadays?
I lead, right now I'm kind of taking a hiatus from our big church, but I do a lot of little things on the side where I help in my small groups and that kind of stuff. So, yeah.
Cool.
He's got a gift for sure. He's humble. He's not going to say it that way, but he does.
What all do you play?
The thing I like to do the most is just sing, but, piano a little bit, trumpet, acoustic guitar, a little bit electric,
Mandolin.
well, yeah, I tried to start learning the mandolin. But
You
yeah,
have one?
yeah,
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
That's so fun.
yeah.
Okay, so when did you leave Australia?
So we were just there for a year.
Okay.
So we left, I guess it was Christmas 2005? We moved back?
Yes.
Here? I think,
Yeah.
Christmas 2005, we moved here to Arkansas.
Okay, and then when you moved back to Arkansas, your dreams came true, right? You were worshiping at Hillsong Church, like the biggest one they have here, and you were working your dream teacher job, right?
Well, we
I'm
weren't.
joking.
I'm like,
Making all the money. and-
No,
yeah.
we came back here and we just got the first jobs we could get. I
Yeah.
think Katie was doing banking,
oh,
like
yeah.
a bank teller.
Yep, bank teller.
And
Okay.
I was a copier technician, and
What does that even mean?
like just somebody that comes and fixes your copier.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
like again, office settings. You know,
Okay. Yes.
like the bigger ones. But yeah, we were leading worship at harvest time and just helping out there. And
then within a year or so, we launched our first little business, and really it was very small. It was housekeeping, so a house cleaning business. It was called Katie's Heavenly Housekeeping, and
we were both going to UFAS.
and we were both going back to school here at UFAS, finishing up some schooling there, and then and that was flexible enough, for us to work it around our schedule. We had 19 clients, and he and I would go and clean houses together, and that's how we learned to work together and learned some of the challenges that come along with that. And then both taking classes at UFAS. So we did that for quite a while, actually, all the way through until our first son was born in 2007.
Wow. What was the hardest thing y'all learned about working with your spouse?
I don't know.
Great.
That job wasn't too, or that business wasn't too like big. So, I mean, it wasn't a lot of stress other than just having to say, okay, Katie likes to do it her way and I like to do it my way, and having to be okay with that, so.
And having to learn that we don't need to go behind each other and do it our way.
Yeah, because we did that.
We would split it up, and he'd do floors and I'd do kitchen or whatever. And just accepting that we have different standards and different levels of detail that we notice. So, I mean, it was, we had some doozies of arguments during that time though. So I'm not going to lie. It was hard. Yeah.
And then we had a kid, and then we were bringing our first kid with us, and
we'd set him in a little playpen.
Yeah.
And,
Pack and play?
Yep.
I know a lot about that right now.
Oh, yeah. Yes, you do.
yeah, we would clean several houses a day, and we just, we're bringing everything in. Bring the pack and play. Okay, bring Jack, and then get all the house cleaning stuff, and then pack it all back up and go to the next place.
Yeah.
So during that time, that wasn't like necessarily what you would consider like a peak, a mountaintop moment.
No.
What was what kind of were you going through in your head at that time?
I think we both kind of were at a crossroads and not really knowing exactly which direction we wanted to go, which we proved that by moving around a bit for 4 years after that. So I think we were just kind of searching for the right place. We had family spread out all over the country. I have a brain injured. My mother is brain injured, so we had tried to move back to California. We were just kind of torn by a lot of different places and things at that time, all personal, all family related. We've both been very family focused from the beginning. So I think we were just kind of searching in that time for direction and purpose. And
for me, I was trying to get to a place to where I could provide for my family through music. And we had a couple of things that looked like they would work out, and then they didn't, and so we kind of moved around during that time. moved to Houston to continue going to school, and then moved to Katie's hometown of San Luis Obispo because there was a potential worship and creative arts leader there. So
a potential job for him. That actually didn't end up working out, but yeah. So that season was a lot of moving. I really didn't realize how stressed I stayed, like with all the change. I thought I dealt with it okay at the time. And then looking back, I'm like, oh, no wonder I was always like burnt out and frazzled. But we spent 4 years moving. We were here for a few years, moved around for 4, and then settled here again in 2013, right after our 4th child was born. So we had already had 2 more while we were gone.
Okay, so 2013, where was the dream of coffee? Where was that at? Were you still dabbling with it at home? Because you hadn't been barista for a while.
Yeah. We got a home espresso machine, and I would always try different things and try to get latte art. It was just becoming a thing when I was in Australia. It was latte art. There weren't really competitions yet, I don't think, at that point. But it was something I really wanted to get better at. So I would focus on making the best coffee I possibly could at home. And then we always, anytime we traveled, or any new place that we lived, we'd always seek out the mom and pop coffee shops, the ones who were craft and doing their own roasting, and would frequent those any chance we got. And so it was always there, but honestly, it was just kind of at a low simmer on the back burner during that time, because we were kind of just doing what we needed to do to make ends meet and start our family, and kind of had to start over, moving to Texas and California. And so it wasn't really until we moved back here in 2013 that then once we got settled, and it really started coming back to us like, oh, hey, maybe this is our opportunity. Maybe this is our season.
And for me, 2013 was a low point. It was kind of like, not that it was like, it's so horrible, but it was, okay, where do we go from here? We're at the bottom, and so, I was working in a factory, and that was never my intention. I was more of a creative person and wanting to do music and all of that. And so, we had just had our 4th child, and I'm working in a factory and not realizing my dream of music ministry. And then all of a sudden it was like, what about this other dream? And I just remembered Katie's dream about having a coffee shop. What she wanted was a coffee shop / flower shop. And so I was like, just thinking about that, working in the middle of the night at a factory, and just, my brain's just going while I'm doing work and stuff, and thinking, what about Katie's dream that she had? And just started kind of pushing that, on her.
He just had to remind me that that's what I had wanted for so long. Because I had gotten so in the grind of just doing what we needed to do and trying our best to thrive as a family and raise this litter of babies.
Yeah.
And I actually, that's when I was working at, I was part of the startup crew for a private Christian school here. And I was the lead teacher, I say that in quotes, in the infant room. So these are babies 1 and under. That was not a good fit. And I got moved to different positions at the school because I asked. I'm like, oh, I'm pretty miserable. That's when I realized that I really was not, I really didn't want to teach. We had 4 children of our own, and that was my capacity, is I wanted everything I could to pour into my kids, and I just didn't have anything left over for a classroom of kids. And so that's what I was doing at that time. And actually, I did that even after we started hobby roasting and selling at farmers market. We would I remember staying up late all night, roasting coffee, trying to nap between batches and then rotate the coffee roasting and then pop up the tent at farmers market. So it was a grind. We were juggling a lot at that time, but we saw that there was enough interest in coffee and really a niche, like a gap in the market here, because it definitely was not oversaturated with craft coffee shops in Fort Smith at that time. Still isn't.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we just kind of saw that, hey, maybe we just start pushing this a little further. And then as interest grew and grew and grew, that's what showed us, okay, that the path just became more illuminated, I guess, more clear for us.
Yeah, I think we also were pretty calculated about it as well, because, as soon as we kind of recognized, oh, maybe this is a place where we could pursue the dream of a coffee shop, we started asking questions like, well, how do you do that? And going to Google, like, how do you open a coffee shop? And so we came to the conclusion that, roasting was where it was at, and if you're really going to have a good return on your money, you needed to be able to produce the product, that you were selling. And so that actually, gives us a bigger return. So, we just started diving into that. We had, for the last couple of years before that, we had been diving into preparing our own drinks at home and that kind of stuff, and just being hobbyists, in the coffee world. And then we took that hobby to roasting, and then the next step we took was taking our tax return and buying a commercial roaster. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
A few takeaways that y'all said that I think are good. One, you mentioned that you had been busy for quite a while. I think you said a year or two, surviving, that you forgot about your dream.
Yeah.
And I think that's so important to identify that is a thing that happens, because so many people do that. I mean, even kids coming out of college, I think, or high school, they're one of the main people who do that. You get out of school, you go find a job working at a gas station, at McDonald's, at Walmart, and you get in that grind for so long, working 5 days, 6 days, 7 days, 9 to 8, 6 to 6, whatever it is, to where you even forget that this is temporary.
Right.
And then you wake up and you're 60.
Yep.
You can't retire.
Thank God. Not quite 60. Yeah. But yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And I think you too, you said you were working in a shop and you were in a place where you didn't like what you were doing, but it seems like that pushed you to be passionate about something else, which was her passion, which was interesting.
Yeah. I mean, because to me, I was like, I'm not giving up on music and creative stuff, but I felt like her dream seemed more attainable to me, I guess, and so I just latched onto that and started pushing that, And
I had so much fear because I like safety. Especially after doing, moving around and having a lot of life change. I just wanted something stable, and entrepreneurship is not stable. So I was terrified, and I also lacked confidence in our brand. I knew we had something. I knew we were doing something special, and I knew that the heartbeat behind our business was genuine. But I probably would have been scared to take the next step of like opening a storefront, if it hadn't been for him nudging and also just seeing.
It was a little bit more than a nudge.
It was more than a nudge.
Like we had several fights about like, this is possible. We can do it, and just, the two conflicting personalities trying to wrap their heads around what was going to actually come out of all that, so
even though it was my dream initially, he's truly the visionary between us, if that makes sense.
Yes.
Like he can actually see it coming to fruition and see a path to get there. I kind of shut down because it feels overwhelming. And And that's why, that's why we need each other. I would have never done it had it not been for him reminding me that that's what I had wanted for so long.
I'm curious, is there times kind of where y'all butt head on, like even big things or little things? Do those moments make the great moments better because you've been through the process together? If that makes sense. So does it make the highs a little bit higher than you think they would be if it was just an accomplishment that he had figured out on his own, his way, instead of incorporating your way within it?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. It's definitely gratifying, and we get to celebrate together. I think that we still are in the throes of growth and scaling our business. And so it's hard. We've not had this moment where we feel like we've arrived, yet.
we have very little moments here and there.
Wins. And the overarching thing is, hey, we survived. Like, we have survived the first 7 years of our storefront.
I think they are big wins, but we just have a hard time recognizing that they're big wins sometimes, I don't
know. I don't know if it would be easier if it was, just my thing or just your thing, because we can celebrate with each other and be happy for each other. But there is something that bonds us in a, combined celebration, or feeling like, okay, we did this. Like, as hard as it's been, we have done this together,
Yeah.
And so, I think there's a lot of satisfaction that comes from that. I don't know about real highs.
I think it is. I think the fact that that we're doing it together, what's the word? It, compounds the fun.
It just makes it more enjoyable.
The goodness,
It's good. Really, what I meant.
Yeah.
Like,
and it is, and especially like on the horizon, we have some exciting things. Like, we're going to go start direct sourcing our coffee. So that means travel for he and I together. I'm taking Spanish lessons, and so, yes, we get to do these things that we have that common interest at this point. And so, yes, it's a lot more fun and a lot more challenging simultaneously.
But also on the opposite side of that, the bad times are more bad because we have to deal with, like when something's bad for yourself, it feels like, oh, that's really bad, but you know what, I'm going to pick up my stuff and move on. But when the person next to you is feeling the same thing and you have to see them go through that, it makes it 10 times harder, because you might have been able to pick up your stuff and move on, but now you got to figure out how to get them to pick up their stuff and move on too. We do that for each other on different things, Yeah.
So speaking of picking up each other's junk and carrying it, how was day one of opening the shop?
Well, we had been just, it took us about 6 months to renovate. Once we found a space, quirky old gas station, had never been used for food service. And it really was just about 6 months of renovation, but we did a lot of the work hands-on, along with our project manager and a couple, subs to help us. But
a lot of our friends.
Yeah. But we did a lot of the work ourselves. And so, at the end of it, like, that was the first time I'd have ever tiled anything. I had to learn how to tile, all these things that, it's like you learn you're actually multi-talented. But at that point, we were like, okay, let's do a soft open. We got our final approvals, all that. So we had about a week or two of a soft open time where we kind of did some different hours, tried out some different things. And then we didn't have any money left. We had gone through all of the initial capital. And I think we had $500 in our checking account, in our business checking. And we said, okay, it's time to open. We need to start bringing in some money.
Because we had to, we literally had to open our doors or we were just going to run out of money. So.
And he was still working at Nestle, and it was providing enough for our family, but we have to keep those finances separate. So it was time for us to open our doors. So we we went ahead and opened, had a big grand opening celebration. Really, it was a blur, almost kind of like a wedding day or something where it's all fun and energized. And then afterwards you're like, what even happened?
Yeah.
Like, this is
Who was
crazy.
even there?
Who was there? I have to look at pictures and I'm like, oh yeah, they were there. But I mean, I think that the city of Fort Smith was ready for us to open. The whole time we had this philosophy of open windows. We didn't board off our windows or anything. It was very high visibility, our renovations on the building. The whole time we were still laying the groundwork with social media posts, taking them along in our journey with us. And we had already also spent 3 years building up that customer base. So they were ready for us to open. So really, we were very blessed in that aspect, because as soon as we opened our doors, we were busy.
That's awesome.
And of course, our volume has built tremendously over the years. But yeah, we felt pretty quickly, I felt a little better about it. I'm like, maybe we'll be okay. maybe we'll survive.
I always had the confidence that we would make it. You know, it was just making sure that all of our ducks were in a row. So, but yeah, Katie didn't really have the confidence. But I think as soon as we opened up, it started being pretty clear to you. Okay, yeah, we're gonna be okay.
Yeah, and it was a lot. I mean, he was still working his job full time, and I was trying to run the business. And within about 6 or 8 months, they were going to force him. The job he was working was going to force him back to working nights. And we knew at that point that is not conducive to a healthy family, at least not for us with the business, with 4 children, and him working a night, the graveyard shift. So we took that opportunity to
take a leap of faith. Yeah,
that's what it was. And he left his job.
Oh, wow.
And we went just full on. And since then, so that was, 6.5 years ago now that we just went all in. So this is our livelihood now, Fort Smith Coffee Company.
Where have some of the blessings been because of that leap that you've taken?
Just getting more time with family, getting to do something that I am passionate about as my job, and just feeling fulfilled because of that. Yeah.
The freedom, I think the freedom of time, and we've not always given that to ourselves. The freedom to be a little more flexible with our time, because for different reasons, it wasn't possible sometimes.
Yeah.
We've opened 2 locations now, working on our 3rd. And so at this point, we are trying to focus on and we have gotten the right people on the bus to help us steer the business. So we have a leadership team in place, and that does afford us more time to enjoy the ownership part. So honestly, this is kind of the first season where we've been able to enjoy some more of those freedoms. So it's taken time.
Well, I mean, I'm not saying not having to do work, like the work that we do is work that we enjoy. Yeah. And we get to do it when I'm next to her, or having my kids in tow with me, as throughout the day, like I had our youngest Annabelle today. I was going around taking care of stuff and running errands, and then she's just hanging out with me, and so while I'm doing my work, I'm also getting to incorporate my family and things that I enjoy doing. And so usually for most people, that's separate. Yeah. They do their job and then they do their family. And this way I have control over what that is, and to me, it's the best way is just having it all mixed.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I was just talking about that with Josh this morning on an episode, talking about, I don't necessarily believe in, for at least the type of work that I do, work-life separation. I believe in integration. And I think that's like I was saying with him, one of the biggest reasons why like it's so valuable to me that Lauren stays home as a stay-at-home mom, because that allows me to fulfill the callings that I need to fulfill, but also it allows them to come along with me sometimes when I'm fulfilling that calling. So it's super important.
Yeah.
What are some of the things that get you excited when you think about Fort Smith Coffee Co. nowadays?
Opening the third location out at the barracks is exciting. Getting to that point of being able to offer people more of a culinary experience. So, full service, optional for breakfast, brunch, and lunch. That's something we've always wanted to do more of. I already mentioned this, but traveling, so going to source our coffee, cutting out the middleman, and really having those relationships with the farmers, because it's kind of what it's all about, the full life cycle of coffee, and bringing that knowledge back to Fort Smith and helping people understand what all goes into it, and maybe helping them understand why we can't charge $1.50 for a cup of coffee, because it's this in-depth process, and we're supporting, coffee supports all the different corners of the world where coffee is grown. So it's just neat. So those are the things that excite me.
I'm excited about our bottling possibilities right now. So
You're what now?
Bottling.
Yeah.
So just, pre-making drinks.
Oh, like lattes and things?
Yeah, lattes, iced coffees and
cold brew,
cold brew, yeah.
And retail? Like put them in? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of some of there are some companies who do that now, that quite a few of them are in like Target and things, right?
Yeah.
But it's canned.
Yeah, so you can do canned or you can do bottle. Okay. I kind of like the embossed glass look, and so it's hard to find someone to do that. So we're kind of, hoping, we're still looking, but we're hoping we can find something that'll look really cool,
That's cool.
Yeah.
That is really cool.
Yeah.
So what are some ways that people who are listening can maybe be a part of what you guys are doing in the community that you're growing?
Well, they can visit our coffee shops. We're open 7 days a week. And so if Fort Smith local or passing through, if someone's traveling on the 40, it's a quick hop down to our shop. We get a lot of travelers, road trippers. And you can also order online. So we do ship our coffee and our merchandise, and follow along on our social media. And pray.
Yeah.
Pray for us. It doesn't cost anything.
Yeah, that's really cool. Well, thank you guys for coming on. Actually, I forgot to mention this early on. This podcast was inspired by you guys because you host a morning mugs meeting. Yeah. And sometimes, when it's a smaller crew, people get to share a little bit longer and you get to hear more of people's stories. And I was like, man, there's so many stories that would be good to be captured and remembered and broadcasted, so that other people in small, points of the state or out of state can listen to those stories and grow from them, whether it's Healing Moon Farm and Soapery or Farmers Market Direct or you guys' story that I've gotten to hear a few times now. Those are all super cool things that people would love to hear. Right. And maybe honestly even save them a headache. Like maybe someone was listening to this podcast and they're like, I wanted to start a coffee shop, or I plan to start a coffee shop next year. Then they hear how much goes into it. Like, I can't really afford that. My family can't afford that right now. That's a win. That's not a loss.
Right.
And so those are all huge things. So thank you guys for that. But then also thank you for coming on the episode.
Thank you for having us.
For having us. It was fun.